Melissa Bell's with us from Normandy and joins me now. Melissa, you're in calm waters at sea, but it must be giving you an idea of, in some shape or form, what it must have been like to have to face that beach and know you were going into hell.
That's right, Richard. I'd just like to show you, these are the Normandy beaches. This is what all those young men were facing that night 75 years ago. It was the middle of the night, between the night of the 5th and the 6th, as they came off these beaches and stormed them. We now know that, of course, all the bombardments that were meant to have taken out the enemy positions had essentially left them relatively intact. And all these young men, this is Gold Beach that we're landing on, where the British landed. Omaha is to my right, Juneau to my left. So many of these young men were facing their certain death because the enemy positions were relatively intact. We're on an amphibious truck. This is, in fact, a truck. We're on the ocean, Richard, but have a look. These were invented in 1941, and they were absolutely crucial. Have a look at this. It was this piece of engineering that allowed not that first wave of young men to make it to the shores, but what was necessary for them to succeed in their mission: the bringing of the supplies, the gasoline, the food that was necessary for the operation. The second wave of those supplies that was as necessary was. I'm going to make you very jealous now. We're going to storm that beach together, Richard. Have a look. This is how it happened. These were the very trucks that brought those supplies onto the Normandy beaches 75 years ago and allowed that victory to be secure. The victory that we've been hearing about all day today. Extremely poignant moments as those final few veterans, all now in their 90s, came to remember those comrades who fell, all of those heads of state who came to remember the peace that was built on the back of that victory. Richard,
What's it feel like? What is it? I mean, you know, we've heard about it, we've lived it in the sense of our parents and our grandparents who have told us about it. My parents are of the second-generation war age, and they were evacuated from parts of England. What does it feel like to be there and go through that?
Richard, we're going to head back out to the ocean now. I'm just going to allow you to come with us without running anyone over at this point. We're going to head back into the water. I'd just like you to appreciate with me this extraordinary feat of technology. 75 years old, and these things are still seaworthy. What we've seen today were extraordinary scenes. Not only the veterans who managed to come here, those who are in their 90s now and who still survive, some of them in their hundreds, but the very many younger people who came just to appreciate those sacrifices that had been made. It was an extraordinary day today, probably the last significant anniversary of D-Day that we will have with anyone who is still alive, to be able to talk about precisely what they felt, precisely what happened, and precisely those sacrifices that were made.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there, Melissa, because I was listening today and I was reading over the weekend. Many of those who died literally died when they jumped off the ships. They had so much gear, they had so much food, they had so much clothing, and the boats weren't that close, and the water was too deep, and they perished and died where they jumped.
Exactly right. This was an operation that was so ambitious. None has ever been mounted like it since. None had ever been attempted before. And what you refer to, though, there, Richard, are those very many thousands of men who arrived on all of these beaches, and in particular Omaha Beach, where the Americans landed, which is essentially a bunch of dunes and of troughs that go up into the ocean. They arrived in the middle of the night. What we're seeing here is still daylight, so it's very different. It was raining. It was the middle of the night. These boats arrived to deposit them on the ocean. They didn't realize that they hadn't quite arrived at shore. So you're quite right. All of these men, 18, 19, 20-year-old American, Brits, Canadians, who had no idea about France and about where they were landing, were deposited in the ocean, many of them to drown under the weight of what they were carrying. So many thousands were lost even before they could reach the shore. And actually, we're talking about children. Then those that did make it, that first wave that landed, especially on Omaha Beach, bloody Omaha, that's how deadly it was. It came to be known as that. 90% of the men that landed in that first wave died. And again, we're talking about the youngest of men. They were so young, Richard. Those that then continued, we've been paying our respects over the course of the last few days to these veterans who've turned up. We were yesterday in a part of Normandy that is just behind these beaches, 40 ans, the 101st Airborne Division. These were the parachutists who came in, and for several days, having landed in enemy territory in the middle of the night, being shot down in the rain, then had to fight their way out. They were isolated, they were dispersed, Richard. They spent several days fighting enemy positions, enemy fire. It was with their bayonets that they eventually fought their way out, liberating that crucial point that allowed all of these beaches to be connected, to be linked, and that was one of the crucial victories. We celebrated that yesterday. There were about 40 veterans of the 101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army there. Those that could stood when the Star-Spangled Banner was played, when Taps was played. It was an extraordinary moment. There are so few of them left who really understand the sacrifices that were made on that day, Richard.
Melissa Bell in Normandy, thank you.